And we have with us Callye Keene. Callye and his brother are taking over operation of their business, K-Form, and they have grown it massively over the last few years. And we're going to have an opportunity to hear from Callye what they've accomplished and how they've done that. So welcome, Callye.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's start a little bit about you. Your chief development officer, chief business development officer. What exactly does that mean?
Sure. It's a fancy way of saying communicating with people, figuring out what they want, and making sure that on our pathway to growth that we're going where the market is, so that we're fulfilling an actual market need and we're not stuck in our own ways. It's just
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said. So if you would, and I know you know how to do this, what does that mean? Knowing where the market goes. So let's talk a little bit about who the market is and what they want. Let's
sure.
talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So just a quick backstory. Kform is a contract manufacturer. Today we specialize in the design and manufacture of specialized electronics enclosures for the defense industry.
Mhm.
And that gets us into lots of fun things like tactical radios, rugged computers, manpack, even seeing some AR, VR stuff. Very
Mhm.
exciting. Right. But we started out as a general machine shop. You know, we might modify a lawnmower blade or replace a part that somebody brings in.
Mhm.
We don't really do that kind of work anymore. In fact, we very infrequently even quote job shop work. So if somebody said, "Hey, I need a machined part,"
Mhm.
we might do that to start a relationship with someone, but we're really looking for partners in the marketplace, and we offer our manufacturing services wrapped in strategy and services
Mhm.
to help them grow their business.
Mhm.
So that kind of goes back to that question is like, well, what do we do? And it's just a little business lesson that I learned is like, I went to a trade show on 3D printing in 2006 or 2007. And the speaker was talking about commoditization of manufacturing. Of course,
Mhm.
at the time, 3D printing was like really pretty cutting edge
Yeah.
in the market.
Yeah.
Um, we've been doing it for a while, but he showed a picture of a part, machine part, and he's like, "How many people feel like they have a commodity business?" And very few people raise their hand. How many people can make this part? So out of the room of 800 people, it's like 600 people raise their hand. He said, "Well, you're in a commodity business, right?" And he, the purpose of his sell there was for you to go buy his 3D printers, which I wholeheartedly disagree with his argument, but I understand his thesis, right? And my thesis is this: is that people don't really want parts. They want projects to ship out the door. Their boss wants the revenue to increase. They want an easy life. They want to do more and have less headache. And that means that our expertise is not just applied to getting a part and making a part, but integrating in their business. So, end to end, what kind of projects are they able to tackle if we're their partner,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
uh, how much better can their engineering department function if they have access to manufacturing experts? Can we reduce lead times and costs across their portfolio?
Mhm.
Um, it makes my life easier as a manufacturer because I know what we're getting and I know why we're getting it. And I know that we're competitive.
Mhm.
Don't really compete on price so
Mhm.
much anymore.
Mhm.
And it makes more projects at the end of the day ship out my door, their door, and hit their customer. So by wrapping everything that we do in that service
Mhm.
and understanding what their needs are in general, we can have a different strategy that differentiates us from just clicking and buying a part off
Okay.
of the internet.
I think in a way you just said the problem that the customer brings you is not really the problem.
That's right.
So how do you, in your business experience, how have you been helping people really identify what they need, not just the physical widget, but what's
Well,
underneath that widget, so to speak?
yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, a lot of times, I don't know if you're familiar with this saying. It's a dead cat problem. Somebody comes in, they swing a dead cat and lands on your desk. So a lot of times, an initial relationship with a customer might come in because they have a big problem,
Mhm.
right? And that gives us a chance to shine, to rise to the occasion, solve that specific problem and say, hey, let's do that part really quickly. Let's help you tweak this thing.
Yep.
Let's make that. But it also opens the door to the conversation of why that's happened,
Mm,
what it would look like if that never happened, or in the inevitability it does, that they have a reliable partner that can help them through that issue, right?
fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So instead of just saying, oh, it's another pain in the ass, like it's not like that, because you run a business, they run a business, things happen, right?
Right,
But
right.
if their manufacturing needs were perfectly met and they had plenty of time and they had no quality issues, no design issues, no communication issues, they wouldn't be coming to me. They would already have a vendor, right? They
Mhm,
would already have a partner.
mhm,
But there is a big split
mhm,
of people that they're looking for vendors, and there's a big split of winners in the market that look for partners.
mhm.
And if that works for them to just buy parts from a retailer online,
Right.
fantastic.
Yeah,
That's
right.
great. It's
There's
just
a
that's
place
not
for
what
that.
my business model is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just kind of want to index on service, and we want to figure out really amazing projects that we can do with them. And like, I figure if they grow, we grow. It's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah,
your employees, right?
yeah.
You can only grow as much as your employees grow. You can only grow as much as your customers grow. So,
Right, right, right.
yeah.
That's fantastic. So you're looking for the long-term relationships, lots of future transactions, opportunities to help them solve more problems.
Yeah, yeah. And there's like a lot of pragmatism behind that. I don't want to come off as lofty, in this. It's just, if somebody works with us and instead of having 100 customers and dealing with them, we have 25,
Hmm.
right? Instead of dealing with people that are in the low and mid five figures, we deal with people that are in the low and mid six figures,
Hmm.
and then up. It's easier to say, hey, these guys have this same problem over and over again. Let's invest in another piece of equipment that will solve this problem, and we'll
Okay.
we'll bring this in house, or we'll move more into this market. And because we're having a conversation, this goes back to your original question. I kind of know what they have coming down the pike, what they're trying to do, what type of investment in equipment that we should be looking at, what type of investment in capabilities or quality systems or management, or right now cybersecurity.
Yep.
We can drive those in an actual conversation, instead of just getting an email that says, hey, you better comply to NIST 800-171 next month.
Haha.
you know
So you've just defined what a partnership really means.
hmm
Partnership isn't just a series of transactions. It's anticipating what they're going to need and figuring out how to be there at the same time they need you to be there.
yeah, it's just being human,
Hmm.
right? It's just treating that relationship like a real thing,
Hmm.
versus we're not a grocery store,
Hmm.
we're not a cash laden wallet, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And again, that's perfectly fine for a lot of people. That's what they're looking for.
Hmm.
But I've never seen a company that treats their vendors like that really win in the long term in the
Yeah,
marketplace.
yeah. I think I've had a little bit more practice than you in some respects, and I think I've seen the same thing overall, which is what intrigued me when we met. And I really wanted to be able to share your story because I think that's an important story. It's a long-term relationship that wins in the end, not a quick transactional relationship.
Sure.
So this is a lot of fun. So let's look ahead. Well, let's look back actually. Where have you come from? And then we'll look at where do you want to go to? Where are you going to take this organization?
Yeah, so we niched our offerings down from saying, because if you look at the equipment that we have somewhere on valuation between $6 and $7 million worth of equipment here in Northern Virginia,
Hmm.
and you looked at the type of equipment that you have, there's probably 10,000 businesses in the United States that have similar or the same uh, type of equipment and maybe the volume of equipment, right?
Hmm.
And could we make stuff for oil and gas? Sure. Could
Hmm.
we make stuff for farm and agriculture? Sure. Like we could, because it's the same equipment that makes those things. But creating a message that really strikes home, doing organic digital marketing, doing, becoming a thought leader in a space is impossible if you spread yourself thin. 'Cause
Mm.
then we're just saying, again, let's go back to the commodity thing and just say, hey, we're like a machining guy. Like,
Hmm.
hey, we can paint stuff.
Hmm.
And that's good to a certain point, but to get the additional value, you have to layer on expertise.
Hmm.
So we just stopped doing pretty much everything except for except for engagements inside of what we could dedicate the time
Hmm.
to gain mastery.
Hmm.
So you say, I know a lot about tech,
Hmm.
and we have all of the things that we need to make electronics enclosures, and we're a subject matter expert in ruggedizing and shielding electronics,
Hmm.
so militarizing
Hmm.
electronics. So
Hmm.
like, why not just do that? All of those
Hmm.
projects we make considerably better margin and are considerably cheaper than the market.
Hmm.
So why not just do all those things? So we made that intentional decision to
Okay.
change our language. And that was part of our growth. The other part of it was focusing on our products. And our products have become not only a larger portion of our revenue,
Hmm.
but it's also become something that broadcasts our subject matter expertise, because what we do on our research and development side and making cutting edge products, we're then able to take that information and layer it on top of our customers' products and say,
Okay.
hey, we're a trusted subject matter expert in RF shielding. I know that every piece of defense electronics on Earth has to pass these tests,
Hmm.
and I can help you um, make your product less expensive and still
Hmm.
pass those tests.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you've become not just an expert in machining, you've become an expert in what your customers need.
Right. Because we're instead of, yeah, and just instead of saying we have these manufacturing processes, and like our website used to have like 50 pages describing every manufacturing process and all the equipment that we have. And then I reduced it down to it's basically one page, and there's just some bullets at the bottom that say, hey, we have this equipment. But
Okay.
um,
Awesome.
because we're so focused on their outcomes, they're the hero, not us. It's not a story about us. It's a
Mhm.
story about what they're trying to do.
Oh,
And they're
fantastic.
like, I just tell them, I make fancy boxes. You
Mhm.
guys make the cool electronics. We contribute that box. So
Awesome. Fantastic. Okay. That's actually that's a pretty common um, way to really make any business successful is the more you understand your prospect and your customer's story and what their real depth of need is, the more effective you can be at deciding, is that a customer I can help
yeah,
well, or is that a customer I can't help well, and vice versa.
right. Yeah, a lot of a lot of people, because I do a fair bit of entrepreneurial coaching on the side. A
Hmm.
lot of people start businesses because they're technicians, right?
Hmm.
They like manufacturing businesses, including ours, including
Hmm.
Kform, started by somebody that was a manufacturer,
Hmm.
right? So they think all these details about the manufacturing are critical and
Hmm.
important. And
Yeah.
I'm like, the person that's going to impress at that company is, it's not that they're not important, they're not a decision maker for
Right.
sure,
Right.
right?
Right.
So like those are compliance things that will be important later down the road if you already build a relationship. The person you need to build a relationship initially, they don't care how many of this pieces of equipment that you have. They want to stay in business and make money, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I see this with everyone, including like people that are sales coaches, right? They come in
Mhm.
and they want to talk about how cool their sales process and all their
Yeah.
training. I'm like, dude, nobody cares about that.
Yeah.
They want to get more leads and close more leads. They
Yeah.
want to build more revenue, right?
Yeah.
That's what they care about.
What's it cost me to buy a customer?
Yeah, quit making it complicated, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's it's all about what's it cost me to buy a customer
Yeah,
in the
exactly.
end, in
Yeah.
time and cash. I mean, that's where it really comes down to. Awesome, awesome, fantastic. So, where are you going?
Yeah, so we have our little magic number in mind, and we're developing products pretty aggressively in 2021. So we'll be releasing those products and pushing into a couple of newer markets for us. So we'll see how that goes. But
Mhm,
the I mean the objective is to grow the current customers that we have,
mhm.
and it's to go after these larger opportunities
Okay.
because if we look at some of the projects that we've taken in the past few years,
Mhm,
a single one of those projects would have been half the size to the size of our business as it was 5 years ago,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
So you look at that and say, okay, when we do a larger project, there's a lot of that, and this is really interesting. So a lot of that that's no more difficult to do one of something than to do 100,000 of something,
mhm.
right? A lot of the run up and the thought process and the planning is very similar
Yeah.
in really across any volume.
Mhm,
Certainly, like between 100 and 100,000, there's lots of work that has to get done.
mhm,
And there's only so much of my time. There's only so much of my brother's time or top management's time. So,
mhm,
like when you look at putting our time into as an investment and say, like, well, I'm going to invest 2 hours,
mhm,
or I'm going to invest 10 hours into this. Like,
mhm,
what's my return?
mhm,
Is it 10x, 100x, 1000x
mhm,
revenue because
mhm,
I've got all these people that need to have work?
mhm,
So those larger opportunities become more appealing,
mhm,
and it becomes how can we accomplish this not in a different way, right?
mhm,
It's like, do we need to we bought an additional facility down the street. We
mhm,
bought equipment that runs without people, right?
mhm,
It's like, do we need to create another partnership? Do we
mhm,
need to have a logistics center? Do we
mhm,
need to, so we're asking bigger questions to take on those
mhm,
projects, but they're not really like new questions so much as um, just scaling the same things that we would ask. Like instead of saying, hey, is this drawing good? Can we powder coat this product? And how would we do it? We would
mhm,
say, okay, I need somebody that can powder coat 200,000 of these.
mhm,
So, like how do I plan that out? And you plan it pretty similarly. It's just instead of me inspecting what we do with our guys here, I'm inspecting a whole facility that
mhm.
does that, right?
Okay. So that kind of gets into the scaling up questions. You've had to learn how to scale as you've scaled. You've had to learn how to overcome scale up issues.
Mhm.
What one or two interesting challenges came to mind as you went along?
Yeah, I mean a couple of things. So there's some so like on the side, I build things for entrepreneurs and startups, and I'm always doing my own little projects
Mhm,
as well, and that's led me to build some interesting partnerships and a lot of commercial products. They're built overseas,
mhm,
obviously, right? So I had started to build relationships with overseas facilities and people that do sourcing,
mhm,
and we got a large contract and multiple parts in that to deliver that contract. So it's for our product.
mhm,
we would end up having to buy so much of those products that we
Mhm.
would buy more than exists in the United States,
Mhm.
right? And there's certain products they're illegal to make in the United States because of the type of plating, or they'd be so highly regulated, nobody would ever really make them here.
Mhm.
And the companies that supply them, they're slow and their quality was poor. So we actually started leaning on what I had been doing, sourcing things from China,
Mhm.
because the like a fan is made in China anyways, right? You have to understand this. It's just that there's a label on it, and maybe a company in Texas puts that label on it, but in reality, it's made in Taiwan or it's made
Mhm.
in China.
Mhm.
So we started sourcing our high risk products. So, like
Mhm.
very expensive, long lead time products, we started sourcing them directly from those factories instead
Mhm.
of using the distributor, like
Mhm.
importer, like this whole chain. So that dramatically reduced the price. And in some cases, it allowed us to customize the products.
Mhm.
So like a power filter
Mhm.
for our RF shielded server racks, instead of spending $500 to $700 for it, we might spend $200,
Yeah.
and it's
Right.
exactly how I want. It's made from scratch,
Mhm.
and instead of the lead time being 20 weeks, the lead time's 6 weeks.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, like, that was an interesting problem with scaling up, is that
Mhm.
not you have to look at your vendors and your partners and see if they're capable of scaling up as well. And
Yep.
this goes back to my original point. Make sure that you have partners, not vendors, because vendors aren't going to scale up. They're not going to do anything for you.
Right. 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 Then your order was how many?
Yeah. They're like, well, that will be so something simple like the fans that we use.
Mhm.
I bought every fan in the United States, and they we were buying them so much that they were shipping them, and they were coming in broken and mispacked and things like that. And could they correct that problem? Sure, but it's a $43 fan and I bought thousands of them, right? So I'm kind of like, you could do a better job, you're a fan company, but it was easier to just go buy the fan for $20 from the factory that makes it for that company.
Yeah. Right. 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 Right.
So
Right.
it's so that was one thing, was it's just strategic sourcing, and
Mhm.
that today, so fast forward 3 years, that's something that we provide for customers because they're
Mhm.
going to have to experience the same problem. You just go in and say like, hey, it's maybe not something that we make, but what's the long lead time, or what's the overly expensive thing? You can literally just make a spreadsheet. There's whole fancy schools of thought for this. A lot of my positioning, my market positioning is, I'll take complicated things, I'll make it really simple for you.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
here, I'll make this really simple for you.
Yeah.
Ignore the fluff. Make a spreadsheet, list the items, and your production guys know this. Your project managers already know what these items are. I guarantee it. Procurement already knows what the items are. What's the most expensive things and what's the longest lead time things? If you have any intersection of those two factors together,
Mhm.
you can most likely strategic source that product
Mhm.
either domestically or internationally
Mhm.
and save a huge amount of money. And
Would you consider your sourcing perhaps one of your strengths at this point?
oh yeah, because we're leaning on it to take on larger projects,
Mhm.
because understanding how to do sourcing, source development,
Mhm.
factory audits,
Mhm.
qualification. I mean, that's
Mhm.
how we're taking on
Mhm.
multi-million dollar projects,
Mhm.
because something that's popular right now, and this goes back to a different way of doing business, is going into someone and saying, hey, if you're scaling, we're trying to grow people's business, right? So if you're scaling, let me show you how I can take your machined part and we can turn it into a die cast part, and I can reduce the price by somewhere between 50 and 70%,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? So if you're going to make 1,000 of that part, you can probably CNC machine it, and that's
Mhm.
fine. But if you're
Mhm.
going to make 10,000 of that part, it's insane to machine it. Don't do
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Like, let me show you, and I can value engineer the part. I can design it for a production level process.
Mm-hmm.
I will source it for you and finish it for you and deliver it to you for lower price than you do now, but there'll be no caps to your scale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's like, please tell me more. You know, how does that work? And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, I'm a manufacturing nerd. So I'll look at your product and say, hey, I understand you're making this part 3D printed right now, but I can show you how we can go from 3D printing to urethane casting to soft tooling to hard tooling
Yeah.
to family tool injection molding. And I can do that for you in a smooth transition. So
Yeah.
we can go from 1 part to 1 million parts or
Yeah.
1 million parts a month
Yeah. Yeah.
and not have to worry about it. So,
Yeah. And going back to the value engineering question, really the question is, what's that part do?
yeah. What does it
Does
do?
that part really have to be that shape? Does it really have to be put together that way? How many other ways could it be done? Yeah,
Yeah.
we can get into all kinds of fun
Yeah.
with that kind of a line of questioning. Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah. And it's super service oriented. So
Hmm.
again, going back to that thing of, hey, we might have the same equipment that
Hmm.
that other people have, but we're putting it in the context of their business, them
Hmm.
as the hero.
Hmm.
So I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to grow,
Hmm.
and to grow, they need to do these minimum factors. And it generally doesn't have to do with listing on my site like we have 10 journeymen and we have this,
Yeah,
it's just irrelevant, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, fantastic. That's fantastic. Awesome. So let's think about. I have a couple of topics I wanted to get into along the way here. COVID's been kind of a topic over the
Yeah.
last year. Um, how has that impacted you guys, and what are you doing about it?
Well, thankfully internally we've had very few problems with it. As far as like an external market impact, logistics have been hammered,
Hmm.
right? So material has had delays. There was some scare about raw materials for a little while,
Yep.
but something simple like machine maintenance,
Hmm.
where we would normally be able to call and have somebody come within a day or two.
Hmm.
They have 3, 4, 6 week backlogs,
Wow. Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So we had major pieces of equipment
Hmm.
down, and we were so booked and so busy that that actually had an impact. So say we have 5-axis mills, really cool machine. We
Hmm.
have 4 of them
Hmm.
now, but you'd think like, hey, if one went down, it wouldn't be the end of the world. But it's like, maybe somebody has to stay home and watch their child because there's no school, right? So that's an impact, right?
Hmm.
Maybe the material's a little bit long, so
Hmm.
that's a little impact. Maybe that machine goes down and we can't get it fixed because we can't order a part, and that's an
Hmm.
impact. So we've had lots of little things like that. When you look at the net of it,
Hmm.
it's pretty impactful
Hmm.
overall. But again, thankfully everyone's healthy.
Good.
That hasn't been too big a deal from that perspective.
All right, so the disease hasn't been an issue directly. It's been just an impact as as a consequential of
Right. We
yeah.
we we took precautions pretty early, and then those precautions were kind of put into place. So we were wearing gloves and masks, and then the mask mandate came out, and since we're part of defense industrial supply chain,
Hmm.
like you literally get a letter from from the government that says like, please don't shut down. but but we did our best to not shut down
Hmm.
and
Good.
not have that be an issue. And so I can't say it was a flawless execution in that, but
Okay. Yeah. Well,
much better than most places.
it was kind of an adventure for everybody, so all of us had to kind of figure a way through it as we went. But if you guys were not impacted directly, I've actually had a couple of clients have it, and obviously their teams, their organizations had to deal with it going through. I remember we were having conversations with companies with installers and dealing with making sure they had um, those Sani wipes and hand sanitizers in the trucks. Now the question was, did they actually use them? Um,
Yeah.
hard to control.
Yeah, yeah. I think anything like that is it's it's hard to it's hard to do all of that stuff, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something we've had to live with and learn from. But I was just curious how you guys have handled it.
Yeah.
Thinking about all of the challenges you guys have faced over the last 3, 4, 5 years, what are, you've had an awful lot of successes. What are one or two lessons that you've had along the way that you would be willing to share?
Yeah, I think so as we grew, we we hired, tried, and ended up firing many people.
Mm.
In the skilled trades, it is rather hard to find people,
Hmm.
especially in this area. It's not
Hmm.
exactly
Yeah.
the cheapest area to be in.
Mm.
So we do pay significantly over market
Mm.
if you looked at the national market of what those positions pay, but
Mm.
it's relative to the area, right?
Hmm.
But as we grew, we hired a lot of people and we tried them. And thankfully, manufacturing is a demonstrable business. It's like, I know how to do this. Okay, show me. You don't know how to do that. So, but like you'd be surprised is that we're competing against like job sentiment. So we're offering a stable 7:30 to 4 job. We're offering something that has some advancement. Really, you can get what you want out of it. And we put a lot of time, money, and effort into training.
Hmm.
So it's like there's a lot there. If you're coming from a retail job, if you're coming from a restaurant job, you get a lot of stability in your hours. You can, save up money to buy a house, or you could help put yourself through school, which a lot of people have done here. But you'd be surprised how many people apply and then they don't show up for their interview, or they apply for their interview. Our next step is, hey, just come here. I'll pay you for the day.
Hmm.
And you'll just shadow somebody. You don't even really have to work.
Hmm.
You're just gonna come shadow somebody for the day to see if you like it.
Hmm.
Because you probably have never seen a manufacturing facility before. Just see it, if this seems like something that you think is cool.
Right.
And then you'd be surprised how many people don't show up to that, even though I'm just saying, how much do you want to get paid? I'll pay you for the day. Come on.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you'd be surprised how many people don't show up after that.
Hmm.
And yeah, so it's not like this isn't The Apprentice or anything aggressive like that. It's
Yeah.
just it's hard to find someone that wants to come to have a job. It's
Yeah.
not really more complicated than that,
Yeah. It's amazing. I'm hearing that more and more and more from all different kinds of businesses. Is a
Yeah.
that very same phrase. It's hard to find somebody who will actually show up, and yet that's the core of everything is showing up.
Yeah. So the lesson that I learned on this, and we're still learning it, and this is why there's a saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast, right? And the reason is the our good employees come from referrals from our current employees,
Yeah. Good.
right? So that's a good qualitative
Hmm.
measure for health. Same thing with your customers, right? You should have a high net promoter score. You should be getting customers from your customers, not
Hmm.
from trade shows. But that aside, like we found that that's good, but it's more important for me to pick somebody where their current job, this would be I'd rather pull somebody from a retail job or a restaurant job, like I'm saying, and bring them in here than pull a skilled machinist and
Hmm.
bring them in here, because I can train the skills.
Hmm.
I can't train the people. I can coach the people, and over time we can grow together,
Yeah.
right? But I have to promote and improve our culture first, because that will train the people to be better, that when I'm not directly there, right? So that's the person that says, hey, you're doing something that's not safe, or hey, clean up your area, or hey, is that K form level of quality? Don't let Callye catch you do that, because he's not gonna, that's just not how we do things here. How do you get that? And that's the big piece, and that we my brother and I, we talk about every week, if not every day, is how do you continually up that culture game
Right.
where the people that you have are constantly making each other better, that we have some kind of shared values.
Right.
And um, yeah, so like at that point, I can just bring a good, honest, hardworking human being and plop them into the business and they can flourish. Whereas if I'm looking for skills, which I'm not going to find in Northern Virginia, you're not going
Right.
to
Right.
find these
Right. Right.
people.
Right.
You're just constantly rolling the dice on who has a bad attitude or who's not going to show up to work or who's going to cause problems with somebody else. And that's kind of the traditional way of doing it.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. You can train skills. You can't train attitude.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. That you don't have time to take a person, coach a person through a whole new attitude. You have to find the person with the right attitude, and it's not just an attitude of being hungry. It's an attitude of courtesy. It's an attitude of respect. It's an attitude of curiosity. It's an attitude of gratitude. All
Yeah.
of the things that go with it. That's fantastic. That's the best way to express it I've heard so far.
Yeah. I have a saying, and this goes for a lot of things, but it's 1,000,000 times zero is zero. Right.
Yes.
So, so like this, if you come in and you have a bad attitude, I can't improve your attitude,
No,
right?
that's
If you
correct.
come in with a good attitude, I can apply and make your life better, make your work better, make
Yeah,
you more knowledgeable,
right.
and make you, all I can coach each employee or each I can apply value to a
Hmm.
system that has value
Hmm.
and we can come out with something that's better, right?
Yes.
But when you have a zero and a zero might be too courteous.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
I wasn't going there.
you have a zero, it doesn't matter what you do, right? Because I can't overcome inaction.
Hmm.
I can't overcome that zero piece. So that's just a little lesson.
Oh,
Um,
that's fantastic. That's a fantastic way to express it. Let me tell you, we're getting down to the end here. I got a couple more questions. Um, Looking around the business, what are the one or two things you need most right now? And I'm going to go back. People, customers, materials. What are the one or two things you guys need most right
yeah, that's an interesting question. So funnily enough, we got the facility down the street,
now? Hmm.
but I'd really like the adjacent bay spaces or another large space and finding affordable flex light industrial space
Hmm.
that's a good size, is a good setup for
Hmm.
manufacturing is not very common. So
Hmm.
when we bought the space down the street, 6,400 square feet, it's much smaller than what we need, but it really was the only thing that we could get in this
Hmm.
immediate area. So um, that's that's what we're looking for, because as we're taking on these projects, it's like, well, what would building a we call it greenfield or building a new facility that is based on, hey, we make enclosures, so it's vertically integrated all the
Hmm.
way through. What would that look like? Where would that be?
Hmm.
That's it's a continual challenge. So
I'm assuming you don't want that to be in some place like Texas. That's kind of a long distance commute.
yeah, so we have partners that are that far away, and yeah, I don't know. As much as whenever I travel, I think I could live here, I could live here, whatever. But no, we want to stay close to where our customers are. I mean, that I guess that's kind of the short of it. And some of our customers, they are in that Texas, like, little city area, that Dallas, Houston kind of area.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, they're also in Alabama,
Yeah,
Huntsville.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
living in
Huntsville.
Alabama, but you
Yeah,
know, yeah. So
Huntsville's not a bad place.
yeah, 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 yeah. But yeah. So I would prefer to stay in this region, and I have really great relationships with the different counties and with the state,
Hmm.
and so I mean, I enjoy the area, but
Hmm.
yeah, it's not exactly like the um, the spot where there's just huge industrial complexes ready to go. We've
Right. Right.
already filled them up with logistics for
Yeah.
defense contractors and data centers, right?
Yeah. I think the nearest one I can think of to where you are is maybe out near Dulles Airport corridor area.
Mhm.
There's probably some opportunity out there, but
Yeah.
even that's been growing so quickly. I'm not even sure now about what's available out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's where our buildings are now because we moved
Hmm.
out from my grandfather moved out here from Falls Church,
Hmm.
and this was extremely rural. And
Hmm.
now instead of cow pastures and horse farms, it's
Hmm.
data centers
Yes.
and, and defense contractors. So
Yeah. Shopping malls.
yeah, shopping malls. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, and I don't know that that's like that's like a humble brag problem,
Hmm.
but it is an actual concern that we have is like looking at this and saying, okay, well, how do we expand and stay close to our customers, and
Hmm.
like what happens if we bring on another like a another more say meaty part of the curve, right?
Hmm.
Like our average customer is doing about half a million to a million
Hmm.
with us a year. So it's like, well, what happens when we bring that on? What does that look like? Because I know how many employees or how many pieces of equipment or like how many parts that looks like. So like, where does that go?
Hmm.
You know?
Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting that's a whole interesting conversation all by itself. I've actually looked at some literature on rapid growth companies, and there are some sticking points along the way, along the ramp up. That of course is one of them. At what point do we start adding a lot of people? And then that brings on the question of what about the communications? What about the leadership? What about? Yeah. And all of that has to be thought through before a big jump.
Yeah, that's been a big thing for us is keeping the employees right now at 30. So believe it or not, we have the same amount of employees that we did 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Actually have one head less, but it fluctuates between that one or two that we did, and the
Mm-hmm.
business is about 2.5 times the size that it was. So we have the same amount of employees. So we would like to keep the brain can only process so many human relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and there has to be a certain point where either there's another management layer in there, and I say, sure, let's go up to 50 people, or we keep it at the 30 people, and I know
Mm-hmm.
everybody, and we just invest more in technology and invest more in scalability versus um, having lots and lots of employees. So
Well, I would kind of challenge the logic there in some respects. I think you already have in some way by partnering with people, you're basically outsourcing a management team and a lot of FTEs in a manner of speaking.
sure.
But your real question is how far do you want to outsource and how much do you want to keep in?
Yep.
And there is a leap around the 50 employee mark. There's a point there where it's going to be a whole new management team and a whole new communication process someplace in that avenue.
Yeah.
Um, and now the question is, do you want to take that on yourself, which can be really profitable, or do you want to outsource it the way you have been? And both can work, both do work. It's a question of where do you want to go strategically.
Yeah. That's true.
All right, last question.
Okay.
What's most inspiring to you these days?
Oh, wow. Well, I'll tell you that I get a lot of energy and motivation. So I don't know if this is inspiration, but I get a lot of motivation from talking to people about their ideas and their
Hmm.
business.
Hmm.
I get hyped up about it. So
Hmm.
I I s- spend a little bit of time every day
Hmm.
doing that. I
Hmm.
probably take one or two calls in the evening
Hmm.
that are just talking to people about their business, and
Hmm.
I get I get a lot of inspiration from people that I've built those relationships with. So I can't make a formal announcement, but one of my friends, and I'm an advisor to their company, they just got significant funding. So funding in the 7 figures
Very
from a
good.
large oil and gas opportunity.
Awesome.
So they're building a robot, and like I get a lot of inspiration on that because if you pull back a year and a half ago, I kind of shoved them into applying for an opportunity, which has turned into that company. So I'm like, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And so I get inspired from seeing their success. So I get motivated through that whole process. I just find that really personally fulfilling.
Hmm.
Why I have the other company that I work with entrepreneurs
Yeah.
because although uh, that company does really well. I wouldn't say that it's at the same size as K-Form,
Uh-huh.
and it's just that I find that work highly fulfilling, and I really
Hmm.
enjoy it. So working with entrepreneurs
Fantastic.
and startups.
It's really a lot of fun to watch people grow, isn't it?
Yeah,
And to guide them through that process, to help them see through that next big breakthrough so that they can achieve some real abundance in their lives and in their businesses. Isn't that fun?
yeah, for sure. I mean, so that's something that product development has afforded me is that because I would work on pro on products with all of these different companies, I could kind of see inside their business.
Hmm.
So I could see, how did they come up with ideas, what kind of decisions they make, how they grow after an opportunity. So I've been pretty fortunate to have a meeting with like one person or two people and
Hmm.
then develop products for them and
Hmm.
then have them be acquired by large aerospace companies or
Hmm.
other large defense contractors
Hmm.
and kind of see like this is how their company changed from literally 2 people to 200 people
Yeah.
to being acquired and how the culture of those people like how that changed after the acquisition and so to see that life cycle over and over again and yeah, I just find it super fascinating.
Mhm.
So
That's
I,
fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you. This has been Callye Keene with Kform, and he has shared with us some awesome ideas and accomplishments that their firm has gone through. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate your time.